services. The woman offered to pay for Dot's trip and make sure child welfare stayed away from her. Dot says she immediately knew there would be a price to pay because nothing comes for free. Back on the island, the girls are trying to enjoy themselves, swimming in the ocean, when they suddenly spot a bag of chips floating in the water. They start arguing about who should get it, so they decide to hold a contest. The winner gets the chips. They split into 2 teams, and whichever team manages to build a shelter first will win. Both teams try to work together, but the challenge reveals the more aggressive and emotionally unstable teams, 2 teams, and whichever team manages to build a shelter first will win. Both teams try to work together, but the challenge reveals the more aggressive and emotionally unstable personalities among them. In the first group, Rachel is the one who always wants to be in control, while Leah can't stand Fatin because she invaded her privacy by reading her ex-boyfriend's book and the letters he wrote. Fatin had mocked Leah for dating a man in his 30s, so Leah decides to take revenge by treating her with open hostility until she finally loses control, shoves her onto the wooden platform, and starts a heated fight. Leah yells at Fatin, strips off her clothes, and dives into the water in frustration. The rest of the girls are shocked by her behavior and start to think she might have a mental illness. In the second group, Tony's temper becomes a major problem. During her interrogation, she admits that her excessive anger causes trouble for everyone around her. She breaks things, lashes out, and can't control herself. During the challenge, Tony loses her temper again, frustrated that Martha keeps talking about Shelby and how much Shelby helped her. Nora notices Tony struggling to tie the wooden beams because of her nerves and offers to help, but Tony explodes in anger, destroying everything they built. Her selfishness causes her team to lose, and Martha, deeply hurt, tells her she's tired of constantly forgiving her mistakes and doesn't want to be her friend anymore. Back at the interrogation, Fatin tells her story from before the crash. She comes from a wealthy, conservative Indian family, and her mother forced her to play the cello because of her talent. But Fatin wanted to live a freer life, filled with parties and relationships. Her father was more lenient, as she reminded him of his younger self. One day, he asked her to check something on his iPad related to an auction, but she accidentally discovered messages from multiple girls and realized her father was cheating on her mother with more than 10 different women, all teenagers. Shocked and disgusted, Fatin decided to expose him publicly, ruining his social reputation. When the truth came out, her family found out she was behind it, and they decided to send her on the Hawaii trip, claiming her presence was tearing the family apart. Back on the island, Leah's team wins the contest, and they all sit together in the hut they built, sharing food. Later, Fatin asks for some soda since she's run out, but Leah snaps at her, saying it's not their fault she doesn't know how to manage her supplies. Hurt and embarrassed, Fatin leaves the hut to sleep alone. In the middle of the night, thirsty and restless, she sneaks back, steals some soda from the others, and walks away. The next morning, the group discovers that Fatin is missing. Panic spreads, and then Tony returns from the forest saying she found a torn piece of Fatin's pants with blood on it. Everyone grows anxious, and they decide to search for her. As usual, Leah and Rachel argue again, this time about Rachel mocking Leah's boyfriend's book. Rachel storms off to search in another direction, with Martha following her. Along the way, Rachel suddenly falls into a pit of mud and can't climb out. The others hear her screams, rush to help, and together manage to pull her out. Everyone is exhausted and wants to return to camp, but Leah insists they can't go back until they find Fatin. Leah is the only one determined to keep searching for Fatin, even though she still dislikes her. They keep moving through the forest until Fatin suddenly appears in front of them. Each girl yells at her out of fear and frustration, but Fatin asks them to calm down and leads them to a freshwater lake. The group is thrilled and considers her their savior. Fatin apologizes to Leah for being rude, and they reconcile and become friends. Meanwhile, Klein is contacting the families of each girl. Leah's parents call to check on her, and Klein praises Leah's progress, saying she has made new friends and is becoming a better person, assuring them that she'll return home completely changed. Everything happening on the island serves Klein's agenda. She promotes the project as a therapeutic retreat for troubled girls, offering activities and bonding experiences, when in reality, it's a psychological experiment studying how rebellious girls change their behavior after experiencing hardship. Back on the island at night, the girls hear terrifying animal sounds. Dot explains that if they leave Jeanette's body too close to their camp, predators will smell it and attack them. They decide to move the body elsewhere and start digging, but the body is gone. Each girl offers her own theory about what happened, but the only logical one is that the tide must have taken it away. Everyone goes to sleep except Leah, who tells Fatin she doesn't believe the tide explanation. She remembers Jeanette's hidden phone, the sudden appearance of the medicine bag, and now the missing body. Leah feels everything is connected somehow, but she can't figure out how. Back at the interrogation facility, it's revealed that everything is staged. The girls are actually being held in a building that has nothing to do with the police. Klein herself arranged for the investigator and the psychologist to play their roles, pretending to be part of the girls' recovery phase. The setup also ensures that none of the girls will report anything after they're released. Klein's strategy is to keep them isolated from one another, so they won't compare stories or uncover the truth. Each girl is made to believe she's being genuinely interrogated. That night, the psychologist visits Leah privately and tries to get her to talk more about her emotions. Leah opens up about the most traumatic event she's experienced. Meanwhile, back on the island, Rachel successfully catches a large batch of oysters, and the group eats together, except for Shelby, who's vegetarian. Suddenly, everyone becomes sick with food poisoning. Shelby does her best to help, but suddenly disappears. Dot and Leah are the least affected, so Dot asks Leah to fetch the medicine bag from the forest. Leah retrieves it, but then spots Shelby walking toward an unfamiliar area. She drops the bag to follow her, not realizing it's not properly secured, and all the medicine spills out. Leah loses track of Shelby and returns to the bag, finding the pills scattered everywhere. She cries as she tries to gather them. When she returns to Dot, Dot checks the pills and realizes that the medicine she needs only had 2 tablets, but now there's just 1 left. Martha and Tony are the sickest. Tony is on the brink of death, so Dot gives her the pill, and she starts to recover. Later that night, Martha's condition worsens, and Leah, terrified, confesses that she dropped the pills in the forest and they might still find them. Dot gets furious, scolding Leah for being cowardly and only admitting it now. They go back together to search for the medicine and manage to save Martha. Back in the staged facility, the psychologist analyzes Leah's behavior, deliberately trying to make her afraid so she won't report what happened. He hints that their experiment could be seen as an indirect crime, successfully intimidating her. He then tells Leah she suffers from obsessive thinking and paranoia, meaning her imagination is so strong that it rejects logical explanations and instead creates irrational ones. This becomes clear when Leah starts believing that Shelby is secretly plotting something, and she also becomes convinced that her old friend was the one who sent Jeffrey her birth certificate and ruined her life. Leah gets upset, loses control, and tells the psychologist that she feels judged and uncomfortable. She grows increasingly angry, pushes him, and a nurse rushes in to sedate her with an injection. We then flash back to when Klein was preparing everything for her experiment. She was looking for someone to join the project and live among the girls to monitor them closely. By coincidence, she met a graduate student named Leanne, who was working on her PhD at the university. Klein was impressed by her and invited her to participate in the experiment. Klein's assistant created a complete fake identity for Leanne, including childhood memories, social media accounts, and photos, and gave her a new name, Jeanette. Leanne, now Jeanette, became the same woman who would later die on the island. At that point, Klein launched the experiment. They staged the plane crash, placed the girls in boats, and set them adrift near the island. Leanne, Jeanette, looked at them and began to realize how unethical the whole project was. She decided to withdraw, but Matthew tried to stop her. During the struggle, she accidentally fell into the water and hit her head on a piece of wood. Although she appeared fine, she had actually suffered internal bleeding. That injury ultimately caused her death on the island. Back on the island, Martha regains consciousness and finds herself floating in the water. The storm had destroyed their hut, extinguished their fire, and washed away their supplies. Each girl tries to save whatever she can from the water, and suddenly Rachel spots her sister Nora crying for help in the waves. At the same time, Rachel also sees the black box that could reveal their location. She chooses to save the box, leaving her sister to be rescued by someone else. The next day, everyone is tense and frightened. They've now been stranded for over 15 days, having lost everything they worked so hard to build. Dot feels hopeless and tells them that everyone has probably forgotten about them, that no one cares anymore, and she's ready to accept death. Shelby stands alone on a high hill when she spots 2 bags washed ashore, one belonging to Fountain. They open the second bag and discover that it belonged to Jeanette. The girls are thrilled when they find alcohol, medicine, and other essentials inside. Leah, however, becomes furious, demanding to know how they can't see how suspiciously perfect this is. She points out that it's too convenient how every time they're in trouble, the exact supplies they need magically appear. She accuses Shelby of conspiring with someone, saying she's seen her sneaking off and disappearing at night. Shelby, humiliated, removes her false teeth and tells them that's what she's been hiding. She goes off to clean them so she can keep looking perfect. The rest of the group turns on Leah, calling her paranoid and unstable. Meanwhile, Klein is preparing her presentation for the experiment's investors. Using slides and images, she showcases what the girls have gone through on the island. It becomes clear that Klein is an extreme feminist obsessed with proving that women are more fit to lead the world than men. She claims that if women held power, there would be no wars or destruction because, by nature, they are less inclined to violence, unlike men. She argues that her experiment proves this. Although the girls sometimes fought and displayed aggression, in the end, they formed deep emotional bonds, overcame conflicts, and achieved moments of profound peace. Klein concludes her speech by saying that if one day someone asks what caused the end of the world, the answer will be simple. It was the refusal to adopt her experiment. Those who dismissed it as a failure are the ones who doomed the world to collapse under male destruction. Back on the island, Fountain hears the sound of a plane. The girls look up and see it approaching. The pilot spots them and waves. The group bursts into tears of joy, screaming and celebrating, unable to believe they're finally being rescued. Everyone rejoices, except for Shelby, who stands apart, visibly sad and emotionally distant. At the holding facility, Shelby begins talking about her life, explaining that she comes from a deeply religious Christian family with extremely strict and unreasonable rules, one of which demanded that she remain perfectly pure. That ideal conflicted with who she really was and what she felt, which she constantly tried to deny because of her upbringing and her family's beliefs. One day, Shelby confessed her attraction to her friend Ian, who then told her parents. Shelby was publicly shamed in church, and her family punished her severely, refusing to even speak to her afterward. Desperate to regain their approval, Shelby cut off contact with Ian and told her parents that Ian had been the one who initiated everything. Ian, who was already struggling with mental health issues and had a history of suicidal thoughts, was devastated by Shelby's betrayal. After losing her closest friend, Ian took her own life. From that moment on, Shelby was never the same. She fell into a deep depression, and her parents eventually decided to send her on the Hawaii trip. On the island, Shelby is brushing her hair, but after so many days stranded, it has become tangled and ruined. Overwhelmed by mixed emotions and guilt, she breaks down and impulsively cuts off all her hair. That night, she sits alone until Leah approaches her, trying to comfort her. Leah stays by her side all night, and from that moment, they become very close friends. Back at the holding facility, Shelby refuses to continue speaking unless she can see Leah. The investigator and the psychologist protest, but Shelby insists. Eventually, they give in and bring her to Leah. As soon as she sees her, Shelby hugs her tightly and slips a piece of paper into Leah's shirt. We return to the island 6 days after the group spotted the plane. Their hope has started to fade. They now believe the pilot never reported seeing them. Leah's paranoia takes over. She becomes convinced the pilot is part of the conspiracy and falls into a deep depression, convinced there's a plot against them. Meanwhile, Nora is fishing while Rachel stands nearby, but Rachel refuses to touch the water. She knows she'll never achieve her dream of swimming again or getting the Stanford scholarship. Nora takes her to a high ledge and urges her to jump into the sea, reminding her that swimming is her passion and she can't abandon it. Rachel refuses to even dip her feet in until she sees Leah drowning after trying to end her life. Rachel dives in and saves her. The group sedates Leah to calm her and help her sleep. At the same time, Martha, Shelby, and Tony are searching the island for food. They come across goat droppings and decide to hunt it. But Martha, being vegetarian, refuses to harm an animal. She argues with them and storms off to look for fruit on her own. Suddenly, she sees the goat and hears Shelby and Tony nearby. She intentionally scares the goat away, and when Tony sees this, she gets furious, telling Martha that if they don't eat, they'll die, and that she clearly doesn't understand what it means to face death, the same death she'll be responsible for because of her stubbornness. Tony and Shelby leave to keep searching for the goat, while Martha stands alone, lost in painful memories. She remembers her childhood accident that left her unable to walk for a long time. Years later, she was summoned to testify in court against the doctor who treated her, who was later accused of sexually abusing his patients. Martha couldn't believe it. She was too kind, always seeing the good in people, and couldn't accept that he might have hurt her intentionally. Her mother suspected that something had indeed happened, but knew Martha's pure heart made it hard for her to face the truth. On the island, Martha remembers lying in court, saying the doctor never harmed her, and it becomes clear that she's still emotionally scarred by the abuse she repressed. Standing face to face with the goat, she finally decides to kill it, as if she's symbolically taking revenge on the doctor who violated her. Back at the isolation facility, the investigator is monitoring the girls through surveillance cameras. He becomes deeply affected by their psychological state and struggles to keep pretending. Klein enters and coldly mocks him, reminding him that she pays him a large sum of money and that she saved him from his life of addiction and alcoholism. Klein reminds the investigator that she made him play the role of the big brother figure he is now, and orders him to pull himself together and continue the experiment. She tells him to go through the box containing the girls' personal items and journals from the island to find anything that could be used against them, something that would keep their families from reporting the truth. The investigator tells her that the only thing he found is that Martha lied under oath in court, which could be used as leverage. Klein thanks him coldly and leaves. Back on the island, Leah wakes up from the sedative and starts wandering aimlessly, lost in thought. Suddenly, she hears Nora talking near a tree, saying, "They promised me the food shortage wouldn't last, and that none of them would be in danger, because Leah's suicidal and could die at any moment." It becomes clear that Nora is speaking to the experiment staff through the hidden surveillance cameras. Leah appears behind her and accuses her of being part of the conspiracy, saying she's the reason all of this is happening. But Leah is still disoriented and barely conscious, so Nora takes advantage of it, telling her she's hallucinating because of the sedative, and gently leads her away from the camera area. The next day, Nora sits by Leah's side until she wakes up. Leah wants to know what she remembers, but it turns out she recalls nothing from the night before. Exhausted and confused, Leah lies back down. Nora reassures her and later moves away from the group to write in her journal, noting that Leah doesn't remember anything. She holds the notebook toward the hidden camera so the company staff can see it and feel reassured. But then, in a new line, she secretly writes that she's not sure whether she can trust Leah or not. The staff watching the feed panic, worried that Leah might eventually expose the truth. Nora, terrified of what could happen, decides she has to make sure. She starts observing Leah constantly, following her every move. Eventually, she sees Leah heading into the forest toward the area where one of the cameras is hidden. Nora pretends she's just walking through the woods and casually moves toward the same spot. When she sees Leah approaching the camera, she calls out to distract her and leads her deeper into the forest. Leah follows her, unaware of the trap. Suddenly, Leah falls into a deep pit in the ground. She screams for Nora to help, but Nora stands at the edge, looking down at her. With a trembling voice, she apologizes and tells Leah that everything will be over soon, implying that this is the only way to keep the experiment from being exposed. Leah is shocked and keeps screaming, hoping someone will hear her. Then the story flashes back to when Nora was still in school and met a quiet, introverted boy named Dean, who reminded her of herself. They grew close and eventually started dating. One day, Nora introduced Dean to her sister Rachel, but Rachel told her he was strange and not right for her. Because her sister's opinion mattered more to her than her own, Nora decided to break up with him. Sometime later, she learned that Dean had died after being bullied at a boys' summer camp. Devastated, Nora decided to visit the boy responsible for Dean's death in prison. There, she met Klein, who asked why she wanted to visit her son. Nora showed her a picture of Dean and said she wanted him to see the innocent soul he had destroyed. Klein told Nora that violent crimes like that happen every year in boys' camps because of their obsession with the law of the jungle, the idea that the strong prey on the weak. She said these were the rules men love, the reason for the constant fear, chaos, and suffering in the world. Klein explained that men control everything. They judge women, limit them, and make them hate themselves, their bodies, their dreams, and their ambitions. She told Nora to imagine a world without men, ruled entirely by women. Nora was fascinated by Klein's words, and the two agreed to meet again. During their next meeting, Klein invited Nora to become her partner in the Hawaii experiment after Nora asked her to help her sister learn to accept herself and choose a life that truly suited her. Back at the holding facility, Leah goes to the bathroom and opens the paper Shelby gave her. Written on it are the words confirming all her suspicions were true. Leah decides to act smartly and starts calling out for someone outside the room. The investigator appears, and she asks him to open the door because she just needs some fresh air. He takes her outside the building and talks with her to calm her down, showing her a picture of his son to gain her trust. Leah tries to grab his phone, and they argue. She pleads with him to at least tell her where they are. He finally admits they're on a remote island off the coast of Brazil, but assures her they'll be leaving soon and that everything will be fine. Leah returns to her room and cleverly wedges a piece of paper in the door to stop it from locking. She keeps her hand pressed against the door until the investigator walks away. Later that night, she waits for all the lights to go out, then quietly opens the door and slips out. Suddenly, the alarm starts blaring. Leah panics, thinking they discovered her escape, and runs through the building in the dark, not knowing where to go. The power flickers until she finds a room to hide in. Then the lights come back on, and Leah realizes she's in a control room filled with surveillance monitors, each screen showing different islands, all resembling the one they were stranded on. She finally understands that everything that happened to them was
The story begins on a crowded Malibu beach. The rescue team consists of 4 people: Heather, Pete, Doug, and Barb. Pete and Heather have a complicated history. They dated for 3 years, but she ended everything because he wasn't willing to commit to marriage and family. Since then, working together has become a constant challenge. Pete feels hurt because she quickly found another boyfriend, while Heather is frustrated with her ex's immaturity. To make the professional situation worse, there's a problematic construction project happening right next to the beach, and the person responsible for the project is precisely Heather's new boyfriend. After receiving a complaint over the radio, Doug informs that the construction workers have partially blocked the public parking lot. Pete sees this as the perfect opportunity to confront his rival and leaves to resolve the issue, delegating the next patrol to Barb. Meanwhile, the radio news casually mentions that there was a moderate magnitude seismic tremor a few hours earlier, but nobody is paying attention to this important detail. Everyone continues enjoying the sunny day at the beach, having no idea of the danger that's approaching. The underwater tremor released ancestral creatures from the depths, goblin sharks that should be extinct. A few meters from the coast, a solitary diver becomes the first victim of these unknown predators. Hey, what would you do if a tsunami brought prehistoric sharks to invade your city? The film I'm going to summarize is called Malibu Shark Attack. It's a film that mixes horror, suspense, and comedy. The film has that extreme survival vibe that hooks you from start to finish. That's why I invite you to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like to receive the best recaps. Heather calls Colin, her boyfriend, warning that Pete is heading to the construction site. Pete chooses to go through the water and encounters another diver who seems restless. The man nervously comments that something extremely fast just passed very close to him underwater. Pete says he'll observe and simply continues forward while the diver goes back below the surface. On the sand strip, Doug and Barb are dealing with Jenny, a troubled teenager doing community service. Wanting to get rid of the obligation, she tried to convince someone to forge her documentation. Both deny the request, and Barb explains that honest work won't kill anyone, but Jenny completely ignores the advice and puts music on loudly in her headphones while Doug laments what youth has become. Silently, one of the sharks attacks the diver who can't even call for help. Changing scenes, we see Brian, Barb's boyfriend. He mentions that he's going to leave a ring he found casually in the Lost and Found. Barb is enchanted to see the jewel, and he suggests she try it on. Only then does she understand the situation and realizes she's being officially proposed to. Radiant with happiness, they plan to hold the ceremony as soon as they finish their university studies. Seeing the couple kissing during work hours, Heather begins to reprimand them, but softens when she discovers the engagement and even allows Barb to take a break to celebrate with Brian. So far, nobody has noticed the threat in the waters or the disappearance of the divers. A group of young people moves away from the coast in a small boat, catching the sharks' attention. While this happens, Doug is adjusting a rifle he plans to use on a hunt with friends soon. Impressed by the weapon, Jenny tries to include herself in the trip, but Doug quickly clarifies that it's a guys-only trip. With a disappointed sigh, she finally decides to start her tasks and asks for help with the uniform zipper, taking the opportunity to flirt shamelessly. When Doug questions if she's always so direct, Jenny responds that she only acts like this when she really wants something and admits it doesn't always work. Minutes later, Jenny returns asking about taking a break. Not wanting to give in to her audacity, Doug reminds her that she wouldn't be in this situation if she had respected the law. Jenny begins her defense, arguing that she stole from a large chain that has insurance and that the product was worth less than $20. The more she tries to justify herself, the more Doug becomes convinced that she's a lost cause. In North Malibu, Pete is informing Colin that he doesn't have authorization to block the public parking area. Colin argues it's a temporary safety measure and accuses Pete of showing up just to create conflict out of jealousy over his ex-girlfriend. Pete insists he's fulfilling his professional duties and asks Colin to keep Heather out of this discussion. At this moment, Heather is patrolling near the boat where the young people are relaxing. Two guys are alternating between flying in the parachute and diving, while the shark swims rapidly in that direction. Upon emerging, one of them realizes his companion is no longer moving. He looks down and begins screaming desperately upon seeing that half of his friend's body has disappeared. To his despair, the wind muffles the screams and nobody can hear. The only one who notices something wrong is Heather, especially when she's splashed with blood as she passes under them. When her vessel rocks violently, she begins to understand the real danger, but is still too far away to help. He panics when he realizes nobody is stopping his descent, and it's too late when Heather finally approaches. Her boat is hit again, and she falls into the water surrounded by threatening fins. Pete and Colin are still arguing when the radio is interrupted by an urgent tsunami alert. All beaches in the region must be evacuated immediately. Running to the jet ski, Pete instructs Doug to begin beach evacuation and explains the emergency. After informing Jenny, the guy runs to the tower and activates the emergency alarm, abruptly interrupting Barb and Brian's romantic moment. The sharks are still circling Heather when Pete passes by, quickly offering a life-saving ride. The beach panics when Barb grabs the megaphone and orders immediate evacuation. Colin is also clearing his work area. A worker named George seems skeptical about the seriousness of the alert, saying they always exaggerate. The other two workers, Yanzi and Carl, hurry to protect what they can from the water. Colin takes the alert seriously, but refuses to abandon the site, insisting he doesn't want to lose all the equipment. When Yanzi and Carl move away, George suggests this is an excuse to protect Heather and calls the boss irrational. In the parking lot, Doug orders Jenny to get in the car and leave quickly, but even she shows responsibility and helps children find their parents. Doug gets frustrated with the delay and receives a kiss for his concern. On the jet ski, Heather begs Pete to speed up. They need to escape both the sharks and the enormous wave that's already dangerously close. Colin observes the duo through binoculars when the three employees return, announcing that the road is congested. Also watching from the parking lot, Doug and Barb are alarmed to see the jet